Hi, this is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about why I think the U.S. airlines should go bankrupt. If you're a fan of Warren Buffett, if you're worried about this financial crisis, or you just want to see how I'm trading this bear market, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So we just found out that Trump is going to unveil an airline bailout proposal probably this weekend. And I want to show you guys why I think this is a very bad idea. We don't know what's in it yet, but I can guarantee you that it's going to be good for rich people and bad for everyone else. So why would the airlines need a bailout? Well, if we look at American Airlines, which is the example I'm going to be using, and you could also look at Delta, Southwest, United. All these airlines are sort of in the same position. Some have been run better than others. But American Airlines currently has a market cap, which is sort of the total value of the company, of about $4 billion, 4.35 billion. They currently have total debt of $33 billion. And obviously because of coronavirus, their revenues have really plummeted precipitously. No one's flying right now, etc. So it's a very bad time for the airlines in that sense. Let's look at how American Airlines has performed through its financials over the last couple of years. So it's been quite bad even before this virus. We've had a terrible situation here. You could even call it a bubble in airline stocks, and what pricked it was a coronavirus, but it could have been anything else. It could have been a terrorist attack, etc. And the airlines have really just been, as the saying is, a bug in search of a windshield. So financial performance of the airlines has been deteriorating really since 2016. Operating income has gone from $6 billion down to $3.6 billion. Net income has gone from $2.6 billion down to $1.6 billion. And free cash flow has actually been negative for the last couple years for American Airlines. It's down here. You can see they've been losing hundreds of millions of dollars. Free cash flow you would expect it to be positive in a business that's doing well. This is excess cash that's created by the business that you can then use to pay a dividend, to buy other businesses, or to buy back the stock. Now, in spite of the fact that these companies have been hemorrhaging cash in terms of negative free cash flow, they've been buying back massive amounts of stock. Billions of dollars every year, you can see here. And I will link to this in the description notes below. Now, it's strange that they wouldn't be, we have to ask ourselves, why are they doing all these stock buybacks? A natural use of cash would be research and development. Flying on an airline these days is not a very pleasant experience. I remember what it used to be like in the 70s. It was very, very civilized and very nice. So you could expect the airlines maybe to invest in their business, to upgrade planes, to upgrade the width of the seats, etc. Or at bare minimum, just to set up a rainy day fund. Because whenever there's a recession, whether it's caused by 9/11 or caused by a virus, a pandemic, these airlines are very economically sensitive. They're in a cyclical industry. And so you would expect them, if they were being managed well, to have some sort of rainy day fund. Instead, American Airlines just has $3.8 billion as opposed to $3.8 billion in cash, as opposed to total debt of $33 billion. And if we look at the market cap's not that much more. Basically, this company has been valued just based on the cash on the books, which is pretty unbelievable. So we have to ask ourselves, why would the company be so interested in doing these share buybacks instead of doing R&D or setting up a rainy day fund, maybe having a little bit of cash on the balance sheet, as any smart business owner would do? Well, here's the real guy. This is the CEO of American Airlines, Doug Parker, who's been running the place, or I should say pillaging the place, since 2013. He's taken out $150 million just by selling shares of stock. That doesn't count his salary, his perks, his corporate jet, etc. And this is the guy who has presided over operating income going off a cliff, net income going off a cliff. And yet somehow he's been rewarded with $150 million in stock sales and profits. Now, if we look at one of his forms from the SEC, when you're an executive or an insider and you sell stock in a company, you need to file a form with the SEC, and I will link to this in the description notes below. But one of his biggest sales happened at the beginning of 2018 when he sold slightly more than 437,000 shares of stock. He exercised some options, stock options, and then he sold the shares. as the stock was being propped up by stock buybacks. Now let's look at a chart of American Airlines. Remember, of course, their actual business is doing very badly, but they're propping up the stock through share buybacks by buying back shares of stock. So right here is where Mr. Parker sold the bulk of his shares. This was his biggest sale yet. And so you have a situation where executives are dumping huge amounts of stock at the peak. And then when the stock falls off a cliff like this, because it's been completely financially mismanaged, they ask for a bailout. They ask for the U.S. taxpayer, for you and me, to help them out. So this is a great example of what's often called, privatizing the profits and socializing the losses. This is something that happened with the big banks in the early 2000s, where during the good times, the banks made a lot of money, executives got big bonuses, etc. And none of those profits were ever shared with the public. But when times got bad, the banks wanted bailouts. And the airlines are similar. They're playing a similar game. And it's one, you can think of why they're doing this. This is, or you can think of who likes to invest in businesses like this, where you can privatize the losses and you can, you can privatize the profits and socialize the losses. Warren Buffett is famous for this, for investing in banks and airlines, etc. In fact, Buffett has always said that he's not a big fan of the airlines, and he thinks that, I think his saying is something like, if someone had shot down the Wright brothers, originally a Kitty Hawk, it would have saved investors a lot of money over the next 100 years. So something like that. But it turns out, in spite of this, probably because of the stock buybacks, Buffett was very interested in profiting from the airline. So he owns all four big airlines right now. You can see the top 10 owners of American Airlines are Berkshire Hathaway, which is essentially a hedge fund, though it has very good public marketing, so you don't think of it as a hedge fund, and Prime Cap Management, which is essentially another hedge fund. So what we have here is not an example of capitalism or free markets, which I'm very much in favor of, but it's actually crony capitalism, where inside relationships, close friendships between the government and wealthy people and businessmen results in special benefits for those wealthy people. And this includes bailouts for people like Buffett. Meanwhile, what does the public get? What does the general public get? We get these $1,200 checks. We get these $1,200 checks while these big companies get billions and billions of dollars in bailouts. Now, what a lot of people don't realize because of the propaganda is that it's actually not a bad thing when a company goes bankrupt. Now, it's bad if you happen to own stock in it. So there are two kinds of bankruptcy in general. You have Chapter 7 bankruptcy, where the business stops all operations and just shuts down, stops flying its airplanes in this case. And then you have Chapter 11, which is more often called reorganization. And so what would happen if the airlines went bankrupt? Probably no employees would be fired, or no more employees would be let off than have already been let off. And the pensions employees will probably end up owning more stock than they did to begin with. But what will happen is the stock will go to zero, because shareholders are at the lowest part of the capital structure. And what this means is the big hedge funds and the really wealthy guys like Berkshire Hathaway, Prime Cap, who own American Airlines, will lose a lot of money. And you can see Buffett's already been started to dump the stock. We're not totally sure why. But this is what will happen in a bankruptcy. The stock will go to zero, or close to zero. And the bond holders, the current debt holders, will be converted into equity holders. They'll become the new shareholders, along with probably the pensions and the employees. And so the only people who really get hurt in this are the unsecured debt holders, and probably not all of them get hurt anyway. A lot of them become the new shareholders of the company. The employees are okay. Everything's okay. The airplanes can start flying again as soon as this stay-at-home orders are done. And the only people that really get hurt are the big holders of the stock. But this is how it should be in a risk-based economy, where if you take a risk in order to make some profits, you can't, if all the risk takers always get bailed out, this sends false market signals. And when that happens, capital going forward is not deployed in the right way. It's instead deployed in sort of a rent-seeking way or a regulatory capture way, where people like Buffett, they invest knowing that they can privatize the profits. And then if things go bad, they can just get a bailout from everyone else. And these bailouts hurt everyone in the sense that the US government has to print a lot more money in order to pay for these things. And so people who are saving money are essentially having their pockets picked by the government, because the government has to devalue the US dollar in the process of printing more dollars for these bailouts. And so I think a lot of people have been brainwashed thinking that bankruptcy is such a bad thing. But it's actually part of the capitalist ecosystem. And you can't bail out. I think the worst thing to do is to bail out CEOs, people like this who completely mismanaged the company, have already pocketed all this money, and now why prop up his stock? Why help Warren Buffett, who made all this money by investing in the airlines? Why do these people deserve bailouts? I just don't see it. And so I'm all in favor of helping the current employees of the companies. Maybe they should get bigger checks. But I think bailouts are a really bad idea. And hopefully Trump and whoever else is in charge will not bail out the hedge funds and the wealthy CEOs this time around. What I'm in favor of, I'm not a fan of crony capitalism. But I'm not a socialist. I'm in favor of free market capitalism, where we don't have manipulation by the central bank. And we don't have people like Buffett and Prime Cap trying to manipulate the system through crony capitalism. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. I'm having some allergies, so my breathing's been a little bit off, if you wonder why I've been out of breath the whole time. But I hope you guys are doing well. And let me know your questions, comments in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button and the like button. And if you found this video helpful. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.